Good to have you here on this Tuesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, BJ Bennett. A lot to get to, a lot to tackle here on the program. So to speak, we'll hear from George Atkinson, Raiders legend, Super Bowl. BJ's making me do Roman numeral math. Super Bowl 11 champion with the Raiders. We'll talk to him coming up in just a little bit. Also, Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us as we are getting towards, I don't feel like it sometimes, we're getting closer towards springtime, and certainly the Players' Championship coming up next month, the Masters in April. He'll join us coming up in just a little bit. Also, Randy Taylor, SI.com, she'll join us. She has a column up talking about Matt Ryan v. Matt Stafford in the Hall of Fame discussion, which is where we kind of start. Ben, you and I talked about this yesterday. BJ, you're back with us. Obviously, the questions out of the Super Bowl was, hey, Matt Stafford's got a ring. Where does that put him in terms of the Hall of Fame credentials now that he has got that Super Bowl championship now behind his name?
Interesting, because we were talking about this, for a couple of days leading up to the Super Bowl. What happens if Matt Stafford wins the Super Bowl? What happens if he plays great? I don't know that he played great. I don't know that it was a dynamic performance all the way through. Now at the end, had the game-winning touchdown pass with a minute and some change left to Cooper Kupp. So you did have the late game-winning touchdown pass. He's not there yet. I definitely agree with that. But I do wonder if he's on a trajectory to potentially get to that point. And Ben, I don't know, for a guy that's 33 years old, how you anticipate what's coming down the line. Could he play 3 or 4 more years? Could he play 5 or 6 more years? Are we talking about 1 more elite year? It's really hard to say. Guys have different kind of finishes to their career, if you want to call it that. But I know something you and I have gone back and forth on where, and it's very fair to ask, has Matt Ryan, I'm thinking about Matt, has Matt Stafford been one of the top, first reference quarterbacks during his career? And when you play in an era with Brady, when you play in an era with Peyton, when you play in an era with Rodgers, when you play with, just countless great quarterbacks, I mean, you're not going to be a first reference name. I think that is very fair. But I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this because it goes back to something that we've talked about with the College Football Hall of Fame. And I know there have been some criticisms of the College Football Hall of Fame saying you can only get in if you've been a first-team All-American. Mm-hmm. Well, if you theoretically play at the same time as other great quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, you yourself could still be great, but not get in simply because of the timing of your career. Like I think a couple of years ago, you had Tua and Trevor and, just all kind of, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, these guys played, in a span of a couple of years close to each other. And you could see a scenario where you have somebody have a Hall of Fame type run, but not be in because there were 2 or 3 other guys having Hall of Fame type runs at the same time. That principle is one I worry about a little bit in terms of evaluation. I don't think if he retires right now, he's in. I don't think so. But I guess what I'm asking you guys, and I don't know if you talked about this yesterday, if he comes back this past year, he threw for over 5,000 yards. Mm-hmm. If he comes back and throws for 4,500 yards for a few more seasons, mm-hmm. He's going to be in the top 5 or 6 in the history of the league in passing yards. He's going to have a Super Bowl where he threw the game-winning touchdown with about a minute and some change left. Now, Ben, you've pointed this out. The 2 receivers with the most receiving yards and the most dynamic record-setting seasons in the history of the league, he was the quarterback for both, and Calvin Johnson and Cooper Kupp. I think there's a finish to his career where he could get in. I understand the argument that he was never Peyton, Rodgers, Brady, et cetera, but I don't know that can be the reason that you're held out, because we've all criticized or wondered about that rule for the college football playoff, and I think the same principle can apply here.
When you think about
the college football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, when you think about Matthew Stafford, right? Matthew Stafford came into the league a year after Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has 10,000 more yards than Matthew Stafford. Matt Ryan played in the same era, in the same division as Tom Brady, at least for a couple of years, and Drew Brees. Drew Brees does not have a regular season MVP. Drew Brees has the Super Bowl MVP, but Drew Brees without both of those things, people still consider Drew Brees one of the best to ever do it. Tom Brady is the GOAT. Phillip Rivers has 60-something thousand yards. I don't know if Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer strictly because he went to 2 Super Bowls. That is a team.
But I think
thing.
the difference with Phillip Rivers is if you were to make, because if Matt Ryan plays a few more years, Matt Stafford, plays a few more years, he will have similar statistical production to Phillip Rivers. The difference would be Phillip Rivers does not have the ring.
What I'm saying is I would never ever penalize a quarterback for something that he doesn't get. It's a team thing. I mean, Nick Foles has a ring. I mean, I'm just saying it can't always be about the ring.
Trent Dilfer.
Play, and this thing
but those guys weren't the fastest to 20, 30, 40, 45,000 passing yards.
But were they in a passing league? Like, things are
I do agree with that. I think in this area, you're going to see a bunch of dudes start hitting 50, 60,000 yards because that's what the league's all about.
I mean, BJ, what was we looking at today? We was looking at the guys with the most rushing yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick is in the all-time. Ryan Fitzpatrick is on the top 10 rushing list for quarterbacks. He's on the top 10 list. So when you think about Matthew Stafford, go with your original barometer. You should hear a name and go, yeah,
sure. This is my only point, and you guys may have covered it. Is I agree when you, and then we've talked about this is maybe being the standard for the Hall of Fame. When you first say the name, your thought is, but I guess beyond that is I want to try to be consistent with stats.
Let me give you one.
Hold on a second. Hold on with stats and production. Is beyond just my visceral reaction of, no, I don't think he necessarily is. Would he have the stats if he plays for 2 or 3 more years? Yeah. Would he have the biggest thing you have for quarterbacks, the championship? Would he have an iconic moment, through the game-winning touchdown pass in that championship run? I don't know that just because he played in the same era as Brady and Rodgers and Breeze and Peyton, like we've all said with the College Football Hall of Fame criteria, I don't know that like what are the reasons we're keeping him out?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, let me just use one of your own criteria that you've thrown out there before. Obviously, there's the gut, which I think we all agree is kind of like you have that visceral first reaction of usually if there's no doubt, it's like, yep, like you don't, it's just, yep, he is. Can you tell the story of quarterbacking in the NFL without Matt Stafford? 100% you can.
Well, this is where we were talking about this at lunch. I think Matt Stafford was one of the quarterbacks that helped turn the league into a passing league where you went from, we were talking about this earlier today. Now in today's,
I think the rules help with that.
Well,
more
sure.
Than anything
No,
else,
100% agree. But today in the NFL, when I was a kid watching football, if you threw for 240 yards, that was a pretty dang good passing day. Well, now you throw for 300 yards and you're like, you throw for 350 yards and you're like, okay, now you have my attention. I think Matt Stafford, when he came out of Georgia and after that first year there in Detroit, he was one of the first quarterbacks to kind of help usher in that standard. Now, maybe that's not enough, but I do think when you tell kind of the story of the quarterback position, and Kevin, you've talked about this a lot, how the stats have changed, how the formulas for quarterback rating and all like that. Right.
Every sport,
right. But I think Matt Stafford is a part of that. Again, the 2 receivers who have had the most productive seasons in the history of the league, he was there for both. He was the quarterback for both. So I think when you talk about big numbers and the fantasy football stats, again, I'm not saying he's in. He's not in right now. But if you have 3-4 more seasons of 4,000, 4,500, this is what I'm saying to sum up my argument, my case, whatever. If he has 3-4 more seasons of 4,500 yards, he's going to be in the top 5 to 7 in passing yards. He's going to be in the top 5 to 7 in passing touchdowns. He's going to have at least, and let's just say for sake of argument, 1 Super Bowl. Yep. And in that Super Bowl, he's going to have the game-winning touchdown pass at the end of the 4th quarter. So if you rank in the top 5 in passing yards all time, and you have a Super Bowl where you made it, it wasn't a 45-yard Hail Mary, but you threw a game-winning touchdown pass, I'm open to him not being in. I'm saying if somebody in the top 5 of the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns has a Super Bowl, what are we keeping him out? Like what's the criteria we're keeping him out with?
He was never the best at his position at any time when he played.
But
not even close.
But I think there are other guys who were not the best at their position.
Like who?
Well, off the top of my head, I didn't prepare a list.
I'm talking about
but it goes back.
Now.
I know, but it goes back to the principle. Okay, when you had, I'm trying to think, when you had Tua and Trevor Lawrence and all these. Only one can be a first-team All-American.
And that's what makes it, hold on. And that's what makes it fair.
So hold on. So do you agree with the notion that you should not be in the College Football Hall of Fame unless you're a first-team All-American?
Yeah, because you got to have criteria.
Well, I don't. That's just where we disagree.
Because that's the case. It's not prestigious anymore. You got to have some level of prestige.
But then you're being punished solely because you were born in the same year as somebody else.
You're not being punished. You played. Your number stacked up against theirs.
Right, but it's like, but to maintain this principle, and again, in theory, Matt Ryan's not a Hall of Famer yet, but you guys, we've disagreed on this in the past where I've said, I think you can be the fourth best team in the SEC and be the fourth best team in the country.
Matt Stafford wasn't the fourth best quarterback, though. He was farther down the list.
Right, but what I'm saying is, you evaluate the team, the player individually, how they compare and contrast to everybody around them shouldn't take away or add to what they've done.
It absolutely does.
That's what competition does. That's what we're doing. We're comparing everything, right? Like when somebody says when you get to talking about what breaks what separates things, right? When Calvin Johnson was universally recognized as the best receiver in football, and he played for Detroit his whole career. Barry Sanders was considered the best running back. He played for Detroit his whole career. So playing for Detroit cannot be the barometer why you're not considered the best. Two of the greatest to ever do it, if not top five, they played for Detroit. So that can't be a barometer. The guy he was throwing to, Cooper Kupp, was Offensive Player of the Year this year. Has Matthew Stafford been Offensive Player? No. Can a receiver beat Offensive MVP? Probably not, because Cooper Kupp came out, didn't do it. Was he a Super Bowl MVP? No. Did he make first team, second team, or third team All-Pro? No. How many Pro Bowls he got in 13 years?
But I guess,
one.
Ben, I understand your point, but I guess I'm going back to the principle. To use the principle of college, I know a little more off the top of my head with college than the pros. So in 2019, you had Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Howell. Can only Joe Burrow be in the Hall of Fame?
If he's the first team All-American, yeah.
That's where I disagree with you guys. I think you can be the fifth, sixth, or seventh best quarterback in a year or in a span of multiple years, and still be in the Hall of Fame. We see it every year with college football. Guys who should be in the Hall of Fame.
This is what I'm saying. Charles Barkley played in the same era as Michael Jordan. Is it unfair to him? Karl Malone played in the same era as Michael Jordan.
But I think those guys are Hall of Famers.
And you know why? Because they won MVP when Mike was playing. They won MVP. Now, they had to deal with Mike in the finals. All I'm saying is, and somebody goes, hey, man, you ever been Offensive Player of the Year? No. But the guy you threw the ball to
I would just say this to make a college point, was Jalen Hurts, who we all huge fans of, Justin Fields, we're all huge fans of, obviously Trevor Lawrence. Were they the best players in college football that year?
They to some,
they weren't better than Joe Burrow.
But what I'm saying is, BJ, listen, this is what's great about sports. As great as you are, you can go higher. As great as you've seen is somebody that can go higher. We was going through the Heisman trophies, right? The winners. There's only 3 guys in the ACC since 2001 won the Heisman Trophy. 2 of them came from Florida State. You know where else them came from? Louisville. That would be Lamar Jackson. That's it. So Lamar Jackson won the Heisman with all these guys. I'm telling you, that's why you need barometers. As good as you think you are, I don't care who you think you are. If somebody goes Calvin Johnson, whether you know football or not, that dude there, Matthew Stafford, people hesitate. There is no hesitation when you talk about.
Oh, I agree. No, he's not a say the name and he's in.
Now, listen. Is that Hall of very good? They induct 100 guys every year because it is lit. It is nice.
But I guess this is what I'm struggling with. Just to surmise. I know we have to go to break, Kevin. But so if he finishes in the top 5 of the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns and has a Super Bowl, y'all would be okay. My question would be, what are we holding him out
because
for?
If you let him in, if you let him in, Joe Flacco gonna get knocking at people's door because he goes, I want a super duper.
Dude, Joe Flacco's not going to finish.
You see what you just did, though?
No, but he's not going to.
Matt Stafford's not in the same conversation as the other guys he played with.
Right, but my point is, I guess Joe Flacco's not going to be in the top 5 in the history of the league in passing yards.
Andy Dalton has 3 Pro Bowls, and Matthew Stafford has 1. I mean,
I know, but you've told me Pro Bowls don't matter.
I understand, but this is the thing. Like I said, BJ, listen. You played the Super Bowl. Did you get a Super Bowl MVP? No, didn't do that. You got a regular.
All I'm
MVP.
saying is he could play his way into a scenario where it's hard to say why.
All-Pro means
why is
you
he
was
not?
Considered. You got first team, second team, or third team All-Pro. That means you were considered the best in the league. 5,000 yards passing, never made an All-Pro team. That's the stats. Never made one. All I'm saying is Drew Brees don't got a regular season MVP.
That's like saying Nick Chubb was never an All-American running back. That doesn't mean he's not a Hall of Famer.
All I'm saying is, BJ, if Matthews, and listen, You know what? Matthew Stafford played with Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp just happened to be the MVP. You know who didn't have Cooper Kupp the first time? That would be Jared Goff. Cooper Kupp was hurt. I'm not saying they win the game. I think they scored more than 3 points. Jared Goff don't get Cooper Kupp. They scored 3. Matthew Stafford gets Cooper Kupp. They scored 23, and Cooper Kupp is the MVP. You know who else they had? Aaron Donald, Von Miller. A lot of that stuff. Dexter Jackson is a Super Bowl MVP. I played with Dexter Jackson that went to Appalachian State. He played receiver. I caught a pass against the one that was Super Bowl MVP. Just because you win Super Bowls, that is a team effort. Mike won 6 championships. When the last time when Mike was in the championship, he wasn't the best team in the league. His team, not just him, never lost in the finals, right? All I'm saying is, if Kobe don't leave Shaq, they win 6 in a row. Shaq left Kobe. He struggled a little bit. He got him 2 7-footers. He won 2 more. Who you do it with has just as much to do that you do it. Matthew Stafford is good, but they gave Matthew Stafford everything, and he won. No coincidence.
This debate not going to be settled anytime soon, obviously. We'll come back. George Atkinson, Raiders legend, set to join us here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
Welcome back to 3 and Out. I am Ben Troop. That is BJ Bennett. Look, with all things going on right now with the National Football League, I mean, we talking about prestigious players. We talking about HBCU Legacy Bowls. We talking about all things football. I think this next guy is football. I don't think so. He is football greatness. Super Bowl champion. Played at Morris Brown in his college days. The great, the man, the myth, the legend, the great George Atkinson. What's going on with you there, George?
Man, not a lot, man. Just kind of relaxing. You know, the season's over, and I'm just back here in Savannah, spending some time. You see another up-and-coming quarterback, that's for sure, and the Bengals will be hard to beat in the future with Burrows. And they're a pretty good team. You look at Chase, they got weapons. You got that kid at wide receiver. He can run and runs good routes. We played him, and I got a first-hand look at him. So I think Cincinnati, man, put up a brilliant fight. A couple of plays, though, that were questionable in the fourth quarter towards the end on that last drive, I think really caused them the ball game. You got 4th and 1. I think you got to put a guy like Burrows up on the center and either let him go for it or give it to the back.
George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. And George, on the other side, I know he played a part of some great defenses. How about that Rams defense and just guys flying all over the place on that side of the ball for them?
Well, they came through at the right time. I mean, they played their butts off, man, in the fourth quarter. When they had to be there, that rush, they had it there. So it goes to show you that they were definitely prepared and they got better. The second half, I thought they played a much better game plan in the second half than they did the first half. And I thought they were very effective with the pass rush in the fourth quarter.
George, you obviously won a championship. What traits do all championship teams have in common?
They have a strong belief that they can win, and they play like they can win. You know, winning teams have, and when you look at positions, you got to have good quarterbacks, good skilled receivers, a strong running game, and a great up front offensive line. You got to have a complete package, both offensively and defensively. Your defense got to be aggressive, big, fast, strong, and tenacious, as we used to say. And your offense got to be able to strike it in the distance.
George, I mean, you played at Morris Brown. When you look at right now what's going on with HBCUs, I know you got big time guys like you see what's going on with JSU with Deion Sanders. You talk about Hugh Jackson, and what he's doing right now at Grambling. You look at TSU and Eddie George, Doug Williams, Grambling's finest. Started the first ever Legacy Bowl. How do you feel about the Legacy Bowl, and do you think it was finally due for those guys to get their shine?
I think it was finally due. Like you said, I was in the HBC, but when I came along, the SEC wasn't integrated. So the AFL went to the smaller colleges to get players. That's how the old AFL started. And after that started, the leagues merged. More and more guys started getting pushed to the back because of the bigger schools integrating, and the best players would go to the integrated schools. So the SBCUs, they kind of cut back on producing professionals because they weren't getting quality athletes at that time. But now, like you said, you named some coaches who are in there. These teams are getting good athletes, they're getting transfers and what have you. And I think it's a good thing. The exposure is definitely needed. And I think you're going to start to see a number of small college guys from the SBCU get another shot at producing in the NFL. And I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad it started, and I hope they continue it and improve it along the way.
Yeah, George, has been said, the number one recruit out of high school goes to an HBCU there as well. We certainly know the passion is there amongst the fan base. How do you see this turning into a long-time trend? Do those guys have to go and have success while they're there immediately to kind of keep that momentum going for those top recruits to continue to flow there?
Exactly. In order to get the top recruits, you got to have something for them to come to. Got to have exposure. You gotta be privy and have actions in the NFL, because that's what these kids go to the big schools for, to get exposure, to get exposed to the NFL and get a decent round draft pick choice, become a decent draft pick choice. But the thing is in the past there was not the exposure. Now, with the coaches that are in the HBCU, I think you mentioned Deion, Hugh Jackson, Eddie George. That alone will attract top players. Those guys are going to get good players, and the other teams in the HBCU will have to step up. So you're going to start to see more name coaches, I think, in the HBCU schools, which will definitely increase the exposure as well as give these kids an opportunity to produce.
George, you talk about the exposure, the coaches. I mean, Deion Sanders, when you reflect on his career, when you reflect on what he's done, I mean, talk about his, really trend-setting move here to get the ball rolling with some very, very high-profile coaches and obviously bring more exposure nationally, like you talked to the HBCU ranks.
You know, you look at that move Deion made. I think that was a gutsy move, because most guys would want to go into the big schools. He took a shot. Okay, I got a head coaching job. I can start and show my abilities, show my skills, show what I can do at a small school. You know, and he went to Jackson and turned that thing around. And now you got Hugh Jackson, who coached the Raiders for a few years, a pretty good professional coach. He's at HBCU. You got Eddie George, who played in the league, a great football player. He's at HBCU, which gives the whole thing a different look, because these kids now will get training from professionals and not just, say, regular coaches. These guys played in the league. They know what's going on. They keep up with the game. They know what the trends are. They know how to keep these kids in good condition and know what the pros are looking for, and they train them that way and teach them systems that they can function in the pros. So the systems you see these schools have from Hugh Jackson, Deion, Eddie George will be on a pro-type level with a variation of plays, which gives exposure to the kids and show what they can do and how quick they can learn. Because one of the key things in the NFL today, as you well know, Ben, is that these offenses and defenses are so sophisticated now. It's a library of things you have to learn, and if you're not quick on your feet, these other kids come in with that from bigger schools because they practice it, and that's what they have in their system. They're ahead of you. It takes a minute, and I've seen that firsthand. Guys with great talent, but slow to learn because they haven't been exposed to the professional way of doing things.
George, when you think about Doug Williams, though, and just him being a trailblazer, obviously his NFL career, I mean, playing at Grambling, being the first, a black man, a black quarterback to win and win a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, tried to coach some time at Grambling to start the first Legacy Bowl. Just talk about his significance and understand that sometimes, us being the first, we don't know why we were the first, but for him to say, look, man, I want to start this Legacy Bowl because I really did it at both levels, and now I'm bringing this exposure back to where it all started with me.
Yeah, and he brings credibility. Super Bowl winner, first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, coming from a small school, he gave back, and that's something that we hadn't seen much of, is these guys giving back. And Doug was the perfect guy to get that done because of his experience in the league, his exposure to the right people, and being involved in the NFL for all the years. He was assistant in Washington to Bruce Allen, and that kind of exposure helps him a lot to initiate things, especially for the black schools. I praise him for the fact that he looked back, and he gave something to the institution and the league, the HBCU schools. He's giving something back to show that he was thankful for them being there for him, because he wouldn't have gotten this opportunity to play quarterback if he hadn't gone to Grambling, and Eddie Robinson wasn't such a great coach to develop. So, I praise him for that bit. A lot of guys keep going, they forget where they come from. I'm glad Doug has made the moves he's made.
And George, finally, I know we've gone through another coaching cycle through the National Football League. I know that Robert Flores right now is suing the National Football League, but you think about it, no Jim Caldwell, no Eric Bieniemy. And you think about it, obviously the National Football League is over 75% African-American, yet every time it's time to be the head coaches of these teams seemingly gets looked over. What do you think is going to have to change in order for, black coaches, position coaches get head coaching opportunities?
Well, it has to change from within the NFL system. It's got the organizations have to be more receptive and more accessible for black coaches to become head coaches. I was on a staff, Gruden's staff, and we just got replaced. And like you said, there are a number of coaches this year that were hired, none were black. And you have to ask yourself why. And, the answer is right there in the NFL office. So, I think the commissioner has to answer that question, and the owners, guys who own the teams, have to answer that question. And, you look at the Raiders, you look at Art Shell, he was a pioneer as a black coach. Al Davis gave him a shot, and the Raiders have always been that way. You look at Tom Flores. He's a Mexican. It's got to be the organizations. They have to have the same mentality that Mr. Davis had way back in the 80s, where he gave Art Shell an opportunity. A guy who played the game, a Hall of Fame, a guy I played with for 12 years. We came in the league together. And when you look at the whole situation, Ben, it's each organization, and the commissioner has to make a decision as to why and what has to be done. The statement that is being made is that there are no qualified black head coaches, and I don't think that's true.
George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. George, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Anytime, my man.
Appreciate it. George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll come back. Much more to get to all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're making us a part of your day. Hopefully the weather's starting to warm up here in the coming weeks, which means golf season right around the corner. Players Championship down at Ponte Vedra coming up in 3 weeks. And, of course, a tradition like no other. I can't say that as cool as Jim Nance, but the Masters right around the corner as well. Rich Stiles joining us here on the program, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. Rich, welcome. How are you?
Okay, how are you guys?
Hey, man, we're doing great. Good to have golf back in the news, and of course the wildest event on the tour, right? The Phoenix Open last week. Scotty Scheffler wins in a playoff, and it's kind of the unbuttoned weekend of the golf tour, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a big weekend for Phoenix. It's a big weekend for the hundreds of thousands of people that go out there to play and spectate. I mean, it is unbelievable. A couple 100,000 people at that one hole, 16. It is the highest attended golf tournament in the country.
Rich, for people who don't know, what's so different about, I guess, the atmosphere or the environment with this tournament?
Adult beverages.
Growing wildly.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I also think that the weather is good. A lot of the big players go out there and play. They love the golf course. They love the atmosphere. It's different than most other golf tournaments with the music and the crowds and the noise and the screams and throwing beer cans on the golf course. It is just different. Some of the players love it, and some of the players avoid that tournament just because of that fact.
Rich, if you're a casual golf fan, are you breaking into the game of golf? This wouldn't be the first tournament you want to kind of get introduced to the game of golf to it, would it?
You'd probably think they're all like that, but they aren't. It's not. I mean, it's not all golf tournaments are like that, and it's just a lot different. But if it was your first tournament, you'd probably think, whoa. This is kind of cool. All this drinking, all this, that. And, but again, it is not for everybody, but it sure is for the folks that are on 16.
Oh yeah. People love it. That tournament each and every year. Rich, obviously you had some other things coming out. Charlie Hoffman, kind of sounded off on the PGA Tour, goes out on, I think, Instagram and basically saying, look, you assessed me a penalty because the drop area was subpar. Why are we putting up with this? Our players going to keep putting up with this. Nobody else would take a penalty for that. This is why you got Saudi Arabia coming in trying to buy guys off the tour. I know he's not a big name guy like a Jordan Spieth, or does he have a point, or is he just frustrated, or how real does the PGA Tour look at guys getting frustrated when you have a Saudi Arabia out there, obviously out in the open saying, hey, we'll give you $200,000 for mid-level guys to come play on this tour overseas?
Well, I think that, part of it is the fact that now there's a Saudi tour that's willing to spend money to get you to come over and play, maybe give you, depending upon the player, guaranteed contract for a while. I just think he was frustrated. Not the smartest thing for him to do, because he and the others like Bryson and Phil, they've made millions, hundreds of millions playing on the PGA Tour. So why would you start critiquing the PGA Tour for a rules infraction? Maybe it was a little excessive, but still, he knows the rules. He knows what it's about. And I'm sure if you take, his penalty and the frustration, I can understand, but I'm not sure that I totally do not agree that what he said was apropos. I mean, the PGA Tour is going to go through enough. There is going to be a battle coming up because Saudi's going to throw an unbelievable amount of money to some players. And they may get a couple of top players, but I think in the end, I think the PGA Tour is going to obviously survive. They're very well run, very well funded, and I think the Saudis may get a couple players, but they're not going to get a lot.
Yeah, and again, it'll be Rich. I think that'll be interesting. I think Bryson DeChambeau, didn't they offer him like some absurd amount, like $5-6 million, just to come over there and play on the Saudi tour or something like that? I mean, how real is that you could pick off a major name guy that, as you said, can just I don't care if I win or lose, I'm going for the cash. And how could they lose some of those guys?
Well, there was a false report that he was offered $130 million to come over and play the Saudi tour. If you look at it, it's kind of hard to to look at that if it was real, which he denied that it was real. And Tiger only won 125 or so million on the PGA Tour. So, you get 130, you kind of look at it, but he could probably make that much in the next 2 or 3 years on the PGA Tour with tour winnings, endorsements, and so on. So, I think it's all about money for the Saudis, and they're going to throw a lot of money. They're going to throw a lot of stories out there and try and shake up the PGA Tour and the players. And again, I just think there's a battle. Greg Norman is not the right person to run that Saudi tour as the commissioner, so to speak. He's got so many things against the PGA Tour. Again, I just think it's a battle. It'll create a lot of controversy. It'll create a lot of media, and it'll create a lot of interviews.
Rich, I mean, Brooks Koepka, obviously, he's always known for what he does on the golf course, but looking a little different these days, man. I mean, he's sporting an all blonde. I mean, are fans kind of still getting used to it? Why you think he want to, kind of change up the hair color a little bit?
Well, who knows? I mean, that's not a question that I'm probably in the private circle to find out. But he is his own person. He's entitled to do whatever he would like with the color of his hair. Mine happens to be gray mostly, and I didn't have to color it at all. And it just comes with stress and, dealing with life. But he colored it blonde. It'll be a phase that he's going through. Maybe he's trying to be, maybe his girlfriend wanted him to be a blonde. Blondes do have more fun.
Rich, are the storylines already leaning towards the Players' Championship in 3 weeks?
Oh, yeah. I think now that this tournament's over, I mean, you're going out of the Genesis out in L.A., playing at the country club out there that is well attended. A lot of guys like to go out there, but I think now everybody's trying to focus on the players. I think you got Harris that's out with an injury, so he pulled out of Waste Management, and I think he's going to be trying to get back for the players. That's a huge tournament for all the players. I mean, they all want to have that,
especially right there before the Masters, which is coming up right around the corner. Rich, always a pleasure, and don't say your hair turned gray because of stress. Every time I talk to you, you're like, I'm just getting in a quick 9 or 18 today. So, I mean, I don't know how much stress you got going on.
Well, the stress is, guys, I'm on the golf course, and you're not bothering me too much, but it's okay. Thanks for calling.
Appreciate it, Rich. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Rich Stiles joining us here on 3 and Out. We got more to come here on 3 and Out, including today was supposed to be Happy New Year. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Instead, we're deciding if, when, and for how long players and the owner groups are even going to meet moving forward. We'll get to that coming up in hour number 2 and more. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Appreciate Rich Stiles and George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out here on this Tuesday afternoon. A lot to get to next hour. And then in the final hour, Randy Taylor from SI.com. She's got a column up talking about the Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford debate. Which Matt is greater? We'll break that down with her coming up in the final hour of the program. But Ben, ever the busy gentleman, you got an event coming up in March. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the first annual 2022 men's symposium going to be held March 5th. Doors open at 9:30 from 9:30 to 2:30 in the East Georgia State College Auditorium. Entree drama from AMI, African American Male Initiative. You talk about Jonathan. You talk about Justin West of League of Braun, Savannah, Georgia. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be from ages, we got two different age groups. I mean, 14 to 19 in high school, and obviously 19 and up for the adult group. But it should be a lot of fun. Going to be talking Money Matters, that we're going to break the two different groups up. Just being able to talk about things, Kevin, BJ, Cam, things that we wish we knew when we were, Cam is still very, 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 very young.
I was going to say, we're a little older over here.
Yeah, but you know what? Well, I'm just saying, if Cam want to be in the building, what I'm saying is, I think a lot of times too, being a former player, you always ask yourself, or what do I do now for today's current crop of not just athletes, but just young men, grown men, and a lot of times we usually be in two different venues. You'll do something for the young men, you do something for the grown men. We trying to put them in the same spot. We got the same premise, BJ and Kevin, just a different way of presenting it to them. Anybody that wants to register, go to www.theuncommoncrew, that's CRU.com. It should be a lot of fun. It's something new for me, something new for everybody involved. But I think when you get to talk, the reason why we call it Money Matters is it's all in the name. I think when you get to talking about finances and financial literacy, financial stability, those things go hand in hand. So we're going to be able to break it down. Entree Drama going to be handling, the 14 to 19-year-olds. I'm going to be tasked with dealing with us, these grown men talking about different things we need, because the conversation is different, but it should be a lot of fun. Go to www.theuncommoncrew.com. It's going to be the 2022 men's symposium held at the East Georgia State College in Swainsboro, Georgia. Doors open from 9:30 to 2:30. We will be providing breakfast, lunch, and door prizes.
Oh, awesome. Check that out, theuncommoncrew.com. Get registered up coming up on March 5th in Swainsboro. We're coming back. We will take 3 and hit up hour number 2 right around the corner. It's 3 and Out. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Good to have you here, 3 and Out, hour number 2. On this Tuesday, we're talking a little Major League Baseball, or what little there is to talk about at this point, unfortunately, with Major League Baseball. We'll look at the ESPN NFL Power Rankings. Of course, as soon as the Super Bowl's over, you have to go ahead and put out who you think is going to win the next Super Bowl, and we've got some of that for you here in hour number 2 as well. But first, very important, hour 2, we got to take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, take 1. Will Aaron Donald retire?
I think in some ways it would be kind of awesome if he did, Ben. I know you've talked about there's something to be said for walking away when you still are at your absolute best.
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Aaron Donald? Yeah, I think so.
Why did you not hesitate?
Yeah. Well, no, there's absolutely, and Matt Stafford right now, not a Hall of Famer.
I'm just saying, all right.
Theoretically, we're going to get back into that, but theoretically could be in that conversation one day. But yes, Aaron Donald, I mean, is he the best defensive lineman of all time?
He's in the conversation.
Yeah, short list. But I would be surprised. I mean, he's probably 30, maybe.
Yeah.
This is a guy that you would think would have 4, 5, 6, 7 more high quality years. He is the best player in the National Football League. He is the most dominant player in the National Football League. I think there's a chance that the Rams could win another Super Bowl. They were in one a couple of years ago, so I know there was some talk about that beforehand. Wouldn't be stunned, but I would be surprised. I will say no.
I'm gonna say no. He's not gonna retire because I think the pressure is off of him because he had done everything you could do individually, right? Like I been in the league 8 years, 7-time first team All Pro, 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, had over 20 sacks I think one year at the defensive line position. Now it's okay. How can I make that best defensive lineman of all time? How can I submit that interior D lineman, by the way? Because, I don't think he's going to get the 198 sacks. I think that's what Bruce Smith got. But you're talking about D tackles. Now, do I want to get to that 120, 130, 140? And I think sometimes, too, when you just dominate, and I know we're going to get to that, he's dominated since he's been stepped foot in the league. And BJ, we talking about them pit guys. My goodness. I mean, they only put out the great Larry Fitzgerald. It just goes on and on. But I don't think he's going to retire because he's done it. He's not going to be that guy. He kept saying, I don't want to be Dan Marino. I don't want to be John Randall. I want to be these guys that had great careers and didn't win it. But because he's done it, I think now he can kind of play loose a little bit. Still want to be the best. But that's a lot of money to be walking away from, people. I think he signed a $100 million deal. I think he's like 3 years in. Ain't nobody talking about restructuring. I think you give him at least 2 more, play it out, then I think he'll walk away.
I think he might. I mean, like I said, Ben, and I only say this because we've seen an ever-growing list of guys in this era of football who have said, you know what? I've made my money. I've taken care of the great Beastmo said, I've taken care of my mentals and my chicken.
Yep.
And what else is there for me to do? And maybe for us, I don't want to leave all that money on the table. Not a chance. And I think you look at this age and kind of this wave of athletes where we've seen guys go out on top. You go, man, he's got plenty left in the tank. And I think with football, you're saying, I do have plenty left in the tank. But do I want to have plenty left in the tank when I'm 40 and when I'm 50 and when I'm 55? I think that's what they're looking at. And we've seen guys who inexplicably just like, I got it, I'm done. And now, as you said, every year that he has been in the league, he's been a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
Every year. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been kind of known around the league as the most dominant defensive player. I think if you're worried about Hall of Fame, which he may not be, but if you are, I think that's one of those. I'm saying, but you would say, well, if you played a couple more years, then you definitely. I don't know if he's worried about that. I think he's done.
But you have seen guys. I mean, like Patrick Willis? Yeah, I mean, you have seen guys in their late 20s. Certainly early 30s.
People
Sanders.
Calvin Johnson. I mean, these guys are not played 12 or 13 years.
You there with the Titans,
Eddie George. Yeah. I mean, and I will say this too. It's something you say. It's almost like we used to think that it took 15 years to build that type of career. It took 12, 13 years. Look, man.
But you're also assuming that guys like him don't have other opportunities.
I was gonna say it's not like Aaron Donald's agent and publicist ain't saying, look, man, What is it going to take to get him on our network? So he's going to make millions of dollars for the rest of his life, no matter what he does. I think with him, what it takes to stay at that level, like I'm the best player in the league. How much stress is that he's under? And I will say this: you saw him in the Super Bowl. You saw his young kids. Like you want to see him grow up, man. They've made the ultimate sacrifice. When you talk about saying, "Daddy, I know we got to lend you to this," and I'm just saying. I mean, we think about a guy like Aaron Donald, man. I mean, 8 years. I will put his 8 years up against anybody's, and who knows? And I know it ain't the same career, but you start comparing the 8-year careers. Maybe a Sterling Sharp might get some consideration because this is a guy that had an incredible career.
Good point.
When he was with the Green Bay Packers. But look, Aaron Donald, look, whatever you want to do, ain't nobody gonna say nothing to you. What you want to come back, stay. If you want to say, hey, I don't want to go to training camp, but as far as 8 years go, you can't get much better than that.
All right, moving along. Take 2. Will Kyler Murray be with the Cardinals next season? Of course, he's done the very 2020s thing of, if you're mad, I unfollowed you on social media. There's no mention of you on my social media.
I was gonna say,
I'm really mad.
Not just the unfollow, but took all the references off and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I will say yes, but Arizona better fix this. I mean, you're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, a guy who's a star, a guy who is, you think about what is wanted from Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Can you take a franchise that historically has not been good and make them relevant? Kyler Murray's done that in a relatively short period of time. That's rare. What Joe Burrow's been able to do, obviously. So I'm going to say yes, but I think you better do whatever you have to do to address this, make him happy, keep him happy. He's going to have a chance to get a big payday, pay him. But I'm going to say yes. I just can't imagine an organization being not addressing this and letting a player like Kyler Murray. Now, he may say, look, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, but that would be just a major, major mistake that would wreck the franchise. I mean, when you look at the Cardinals outside of Kurt Warner, I mean, there hasn't been a lot going on in terms of competing, being relevant, being a contending team, and Kyler Murray makes you that. You've got to make him happy.
I think he is going to be a Cardinal, but I will say this. Kyler Murray, great player, first overall pick, offensive rookie of the year. I mean, would be in talks when our first 8 games of the year, MVP talk, kind of tailed off a little bit. But this is uncharted waters for Kyler Murray because he's been doing a lot of stuff. Like, it's not just it's like I tell you you guys all the time, Kevin and BJ, is as long as I'm great and I don't make waves, you don't hear about the bad behavior. You never hear about it. You don't believe me? Ask Antonio Brown. Ask Le'Veon Bell. You don't hear about it. You start tripping with us, we're going to make you look bad because we're going to be here when you're long gone. They say that Kyler Murray do a lot of stuff in the, they say Kyler Murray got to, and I know Cam would understand what I mean. Got a little Kyrie Irving in him when he's at the facility. I mean, just moping around, bad attitude, pointing the finger. Let me tell you something. I'm going to say this. I don't care how good of a player you are. I don't care how good you are. When you start becoming too big of a distraction, especially if people say, well, if you won with him, you won what? You ain't won nothing with him. You've had some good moments, and they've given him, the D-Hop. You talking about Christian Kirk. You talking about different guys that they brought over there. I just don't understand it. Let me tell you.
You think there's a chance they move on from each other?
BJ, I will say this. Shaq got traded from the Lakers. You think Kyler Murray better play than Shaq? That's letting you know you're not bigger than the team. And what is it doing to the locker room? Because you're going to have guys say the right thing. Like, if me and you boys, they're going to come to me, hey, Ben, how you feel about BJ? Now, in the public, I'm going to be like, yeah, man, I think he's going to. But behind the scenes, it's killing the locker room. And guess what? You're not winning no playoff games. We're talking about Kyler Murray like what? Once again, I know we're going to get to him later. He got some really, really good stats. His hand look like my hand. I'm just saying, you ain't doing nothing for the franchise like that. And, well, young people, I got to say this again. Social media is not the end all be all. I unfollowed everybody. You are still the starting quarterback for Arizona. You don't have to have a bunch of pictures with you and the OC. And, I think that kind of, to me, and the thing is, right?
That's pettiness.
No, hear it.
I mean, it really is.
I mean, is he sitting there with the thing in front of the head coach like this? How about that?
But if you're
crazy.
with Arizona's staff, front office, does that concern you? Because I hear what you're saying, but also the National Football League, what is goal number 1 in the National Football League? Find a talented young quarterback that you can afford team control, that you can build around, right? I mean, and Jacksonville's trying to do it. I mean, every team around the league, you see what Joe Burrow and Cincinnati have done. I mean, what would this mean for Arizona?
Get back to the drawing board. Go out there. Look, you got D-Hop. It's not like you're not going to have a quarterback. And you got to start asking these players, is you think Arizona is what it is because of you? I mean, Arizona went to a Super Bowl. Were you the quarterback? Oh, that's right, you weren't. That was Kurt Warner. I don't know what these players be thinking sometimes. Like, it's going to be a season next year. They're going to run out there with or without you. And I'm going to say this. If you don't play for a full season, Le'Veon Bell, that is ignorance at the highest level. I'm not going to play. I'm going to make a point. No, you're not. You're leaving money on the table. And guess who's watching? Those other 31 teams. See, why you think? I mean, I'm making a point. Them other 31 teams going to say, before you sign this, though, we want to put something in these contracts and say, if you start doing that stuff you did out there in Phoenix, yeah, we're going to take your money back. We love you. But just know that fine print going to get a little bit bigger. It's going to go from a paragraph to a page. Because at the end of the day, Kevin and BJ, this is a business, right? Love Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray watched the Super Bowl with us. Kyler Murray watched the NFC Championship game with us. And all I'm saying is, like these people, Ben Simmons, we're going to be scary in Brooklyn. Yeah, because we got you. We don't know what you going to do. That's why they're going to be scared. You might show up, and then you might be the Phantom of Brooklyn because you might not see your behind. I don't know. I just think that sometimes when the conversation you have with your family and they say, Kyler, man, you the man, just unfollow him. I'm supposed to come out and go, Kyler, don't do that. Why? Because you work at this facility. You know where they be at? They be here. I play with Vince Young. Love VY. VY said something to his mother. His mother said something to Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher made it public. You know why he made it public? Because Jeff Fisher and Vince Young were beefing. If they weren't beefing, they wouldn't have got out. I'm telling y'all, as petty as you think you are, you know who's more petty? Them owners, them head coaches. I will make you look bad, young man. It's going to end up being you because guess what? The media, they put stuff out right now. Right now. He said, man, all about this nonsense. Should not follow them. Because perception is reality in the national, man, perception is reality in life. So listen, little bobblehead man, you better cut that stuff out, man, because you're not gonna win it. And I love Kyler Murray, man. I want to see him win. But BJ, what we gonna remember Antonio Brown for? We gonna remember him being a great player to antics, right? I'm just saying he is that dude. Last time we saw Antonio Brown, he's stripping in New York or New Jersey, walking out the field. I'm telling you, they're gonna remember you for the antics. And unfortunately for him, I ain't even know all this stuff because they say he is awful at the facility. They say he's awful, and they only deal with it because he's the guy. I always say this. Would he be this way if he was the backup? Case in point, exactly, because you don't hear from backups. You know why? Backups need that check. So Mr. Backup quarterback one-on-one, his wife was saying, I wish you better follow everybody. I'm just saying, man, it's because of who he is.
No, I mean, I totally understand that. And I even, through all this, I've seen people that cover Texas A&M and go, well, I know why you left Texas A&M?
Uh-oh.
And again, I'm not trying to put it all out there, but I'm like this. Like, I don't think Kyler Murray's – we were talking about the credentials of Matt Stafford versus Hall of Fame guys and this, that. I don't think Kyler Murray's at the point where he could be pulling that guy. I know he's a good young quarterback, but guess what? They have good young quarterbacks in the draft every single year. I'm not saying – but I tend to go by like everybody is replaceable. There's certain guys that are harder to replace than others, but I'm like Ben. What on the credential sheet other than we made the Arizona Cardinals a little better makes you think, I can pull this and they'll be fine. Well, I mean, your head coach got your back. Your head coach probably worried about getting fired too. at the end of the day, when it's all said and done. Moving along, take 3. Combine, next big thing up for the National Football League. What is the most important drill in Combine evals in your estimation?
I mean, Ben, I'd guess, given the way people overreact to it, the 40-yard dash, and probably shouldn't be that way because, Kevin, as you've long said, never do football players run in a straight line in their underwear for 40 yards. But that is the talking point that leads to real momentum if you rise or fall.
For me, it is the 40 because it's the one thing that, I mean, when you talk about these players, I'm talking to my former position coach, my junior year in college, Tyke Tolbert. He said, Ben, nowadays 4-4-4 receivers slow because guys are running fourth. I'm like, what? Like, yeah. And now, but for quarterbacks though, it is the pro day or the throws because look, they don't get quarterbacks to hand the ball off. They get you to make throws. They want to see, can you put that thing in between that safety and that corner when they're trying to, they want to see if you can, that throw, go back to the Super Bowl. Why they keep making that one, why they keep showing that one throw to Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp because he let the ball go before Cooper Kupp even came out of his break. That's trust. That means I got to fit this ball in tight windows and only I can do. But you know, just like I know, Kevin, BJ, Cam, when we watching the 40s, what happens when we think a fast guy runs slow? When a fast guy runs slow, I thought he was faster than that. I want to see if one thing matches the other thing, right? Like, hey, man, why do everybody want a Lamborghini? One, because of Lamborghini. Two, I want to see how fast it is. If I got a Lamborghini, it can only go 60. I feel like I got ripped off. Like, what? Yeah, man, exactly.
First 10 miles, I own that thing.
I've heard you say that time and time again.
No, but think about this, too. No.
For years.
No, here's the thing. If you got a Lamborghini and you never got a ticket, do you really got what you doing, man?
You don't buy the Lambo.
Exactly. Or in a sense, hopefully, and when you get that ticket, that cop is going, hey, man, we wasn't going to chase you because, boy, you got out there. No, I'm just saying, BJ and Kevin, when you talk about the 40, right? We used to didn't care about if big guys was fast. Now they got to be fast just like that rah-rah. Oh my God, that did you see this effect? But it is the 40 because I want to know how fast you are. And let's face it, you know, we're purchasing 253 high performance vehicles are getting purchased. I want to make sure that ain't just a sticker. I want to make sure you are that, because if you had 125 catches and I see the 4.7, you go, but he can run routes. Well, he got Jalen Ramsey on him, right? Stephon Gilmore on him. So, but for the quarterback, so it is going to be them pro days of throwing the football.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's overdone. Myself personally, I think the most important part of the combine is the interview room, where you get to know somebody. 40-yard dash, don't care, because if you were really that slow, would you be here? No. There's a reason you got invited to the combine, and it probably wasn't. Did you run a 4.5 versus 4? No, we think you're a player. Because again, you're running in no helmets, no pads, no shorts. You're doing a standstill vertical leap. Mm-hmm. You're doing a 10-cone drill in shorts. You
better get right.
Nobody trying to hit you. You're doing a quarterback throws where you turn. Somebody throws you a ball. You drop it. Look for another ball. Catch it. Drop that. Yeah, that happens in games all the time. That's called fumbles. So, no, I mean, none of that.
That's called not care. But I will say this. To those workout warriors out there, because there's a bunch of us, right? A bunch of you, not me. A bunch of you workout warriors out there. Man, he ain't even that fast. Still faster than you.
Yeah.
He ain't even that strong. He's stronger than you.
Hey, man.
Like if you're
400, I did 47 reps on the bench, and that helps you how?
Well, think about this.
I'm just saying,
the average person can't run as fast as they can to jump 10 feet. They're making them stand there and jump 10. He stood still and 10, 11, 12 feet.
Yeah.
So you're thinking he ain't as explosive as I thought. He's explosive as hell. He's getting judged with the most explosive athletes in the world.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time on Sunday that Aaron Donald stood flat-footed and just jumped 10 yards ahead, man, I'd be a wealthy individual. I don't need all that. He can play. And you know how I know that? I watched the game.
Come on, listen, BJ goes to the box score. Kevin goes, I got the eye test. My eyes ain't lying.
I saw a lot of bruised egos out there. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I saw 30 tackles for loss when I watched Aaron Donald in college. I didn't.
I don't care if he can broad jump 18 feet.
Didn't need to know that he could jump 20 feet.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We've got more to come. That's Take 3. We'll come back. A lot to get to here on the program. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're making us a part of your day. Pitchers and catchers supposed to report today. Oops, that's not happening. As Major League Baseball met with the Players Association over the weekend. Ben, you and I talked about this yesterday, met for 2 hours. They've met like 3 or 4 times, none more than 2 hours long, and they still can't come to an agreement. Players are mulling over the owner's offer and how they're going to combat it or come back with it, and no word on when they're going to meet. As I told Ben yesterday, BJ, hard to believe that either side wants a deal at this point when you only meet for 2 hours at a time every couple of weeks.
Some of this doesn't feel very serious given that spring training in some respects was supposed to start today in terms of guys reporting. Right. It doesn't feel like there's a sense of urgency. And, the owners, there are things they have got to come around on. And I think that as we've heard from multiple reporters, there are 2 or 3 probably issues that are the main issues, and then there are secondary issues. But this doesn't feel like a resolution is on the horizon. Now, you've talked about this in the past when there are disagreement. You could reach a point where you go from seemingly a 0 on a Tuesday to a 95 on a Wednesday because you look around and go, we better address this. We better figure this out now. But I just look at it as something that doesn't feel close.
Right.
And the start of the regular season is at least on the horizon. All things, if they were as they should be, the regular season will be on the horizon. We would be talking about, the defending World Series champs, the Braves. And I think right now there's so many more questions than answers that it doesn't feel like you're going to have a 162-game season. I know we're still a ways away from that, but to me, that feels like the reality. Is that fair in your mind?
Well, I think at some point, somebody's going to have to just sit there. And as Ben said, it's usually not the owners because they can afford to hold it out. At some point, somebody's going to have to say, all right, we're willing to bend. Why? Because we're about to start losing real money. And I think the owners, certainly coming off of 2020, don't want to lose more money, but they did have a very nice 2021 by all accounts.
They did.
Every team was awash in money, hence why.
Please, BJ was it? Please tell BJ how much money the Braves average.
Oh yeah, so one of the we had a writer come out who, and you can look at the Braves because the Braves are owned by a public company, so they're not owned by a single guy who can withhold his books and say you're not looking at them. But the Braves are owned by Liberty Media, which is a public company, and so he went and did a dive, and on average, for a team like the Braves, now granted, there's more interest in Atlanta than say the Pittsburgh Pirates right now because the Pirates aren't as good and they average more home fans and stuff like that. But on average, he looked at the books, and in terms of just dollars, the Braves for one home game generate about $6.5 million. I would assume that's, just having a home game, parking, everything's about $6. After they pay everybody for that home game, there's about $1 million left over. So you tell me how profitable it is to own a team. And again, that's not the Yankees, that's not the Red Sox, that's not the Dodgers.
So if you missed the 15% of the Braves, people like that ain't number one. That's money for life, right? Yeah. And you're making money. But I will say this, Kevin, we win this whole segment. We ain't talking. Mr. Rob Manfred, commissioner, comes out. What he say? I'm confident. Why? Why are you confident? Have you been watching? Have you been seeing what's been going on?
The meetings,
and we said this. I get it. He is a mouthpiece for the owners. I get it. But I put it back on the owners. Same owners that want to do arbitration. We don't even want to. We don't want to talk to them. Why? And then when we do talk to them, it lasts 2 hours. Go back to the Super Bowl. You know who was in the Super Bowl commercial? Mike Trout. It took me. I was like, who is? That's Mike Trout. Mike Trout is doing commercials during the Super Bowl because he's like, look, man, I'm still making money. But the problem is, we want to see Mike Trout. On the dime. We want to see him out there, mashing baseballs. And I think right now, if you are, something you always say, Kevin, I think is true. This is your moment. We don't do delay gratification in this life. We want it now. We want it right now. And if we got to wait, you will be replaced. You don't think you're going to be replaced? For all the people that kept saying the NFL is down this year, over 100 million people watch Super Bowl. Cincinnati and the LA Rams, 100 million people. So if you don't think you're going to lose them eyes, you better get something right really, really quickly because you're already battling, to even kind of stay in the forefront.
They made some small concessions and things where, hey, we're universal DH and things like that. Those are the ones we all knew was going to happen anyway. But, BJ, you see the stuff that, again, to me, this comes to like pettiness. on a lot of the owners' parts at the end of the day is you look at it and say, all right, we're going to stick on a point that we're trying to, maybe squeeze down the minor league system where we want to limit the amount of minor league players there are inside your system at any given time from 180. Maybe we shrink it down to 150 over the life of this CBA that we put together. I mean, and you go, man, that's 30 jobs a team. It is. But to fund the minor leagues right now, and you're talking about you're going to give that to the players where the players have spent time saying, we need to pay minor league baseball players more because they're the lifeblood of the next wave. And how many guys might be viable MLB players who quit because they're making $12,000? Like you don't have that problem in other sports. Like the NBA is not missing out on talent. Why? Because even if you're in the G League, you're making $50,000. You don't go to the G League and say, hey, we'll give you $12,000 and you can play for 6 months. Major League Baseball, they do that. You're talking about, and Dallas Braden, former player, put the math out there. He's like, you're talking about the cost to teams to fund their minor league system, about $2.5 million a team. That's not much. And when you're talking about billions of dollars, $2.5 million, why are you wanting to die on that hill? Why? So I look at the owners and some of the things like there's going to be pressure, but at the end of the day, you started this fight because you wanted to be more competitive. The players wanted to be more competitive. We don't want teams tanking. We don't want teams selling off free agents so they can be, have 1 star and pay 25 guys the major league minimum and not care if they win. We want the mid-level guys to get more because their salaries have come down from an average of about 10, 11 million down to 3 over the last 4 or 5 years. We want that to go up. We want teams to compete. And that's not, to me, those aren't unreasonable things to help the growth of the sport. Now, are there things that players want that might be unreasonable? Sure. But at the end of the day, you got to get back out there and play. And again, if you're the players, I understand what you're doing. The owners, I think at some point, and maybe there's an owner who can have the ear of Rob Manfred to say, listen, fellas, I'm good. Like, I get it. We're all here. We got to put on a uniform front. But here, we're behind the closed doors. Listen, man, it ain't going to help me out if we don't play. Not because I'm going to go broke, but when I come back, I got to go win back all these fans. Why? Because I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm losing fans by y'all doing this. The Yankees ain't losing fans. The Yankees come back. They're the most popular team right there with the Red Sox. They're not losing fans. You're losing Colorado Rocky fans. You're losing Milwaukee Brewer fans, Astro fans who are just like, look, we have good teams, but you ain't going to play. I'll go do something else. That's what
this is my question. Yes, this is my question on that front to you, Kevin, because I think we all agree and we've all said at some point you're going to reach a point where something has to give. To me, we are getting close to that point because it's hard for me to imagine, given the reports that we've read about how far apart they are and we're not going to have mediation. And now there are new things, like you said, petty from ownership about I want to reduce the overall roster size of my minor league farm systems. It feels like we're not to the point where we're on the verge of a breakthrough. No, it feels like that is not only tomorrow, but maybe the day after tomorrow. So what is the date where you look at it and go, missing spring training is one thing. Yeah. Missing regular season games in a sport that's defined by the longevity of its regular season, by the stats that come with that. Where is the point where we're looking at that going, we're not going to have a full 162, and this is becoming a major issue for baseball? You're probably talking middle of March. You need to have something done because the season would start into March. I think even if you missed a game or two, you could say, all right, fellas, we're going to rework the schedule, and you're going to play a doubleheader. But you need what, 4 to 6 weeks of spring training? I think most players, for pitchers, I think you need that. Guys that are hitting 2 weeks, maybe at the most 2-3 weeks. But the problem is, you really need to get some things done because once you get this deal signed, there are over 600 free agents out there that have to get signed. They don't have to get signed.
I know one in particular needs to get signed.
That I know people want to particularly get signed. And you have to get that done.
And just for clarity's sake, because I had a family member ask me the other day, why haven't the Braves signed Freddie Freeman? That cannot happen right now. Right.
If you see, and I'll say this again, if you see an article that says Braves likely not going to sign Freddie Freeman, where are you getting that from? Because they literally can't talk to him. Nobody can. So the likelihood that the Braves sign Freddie Freeman is just as good as the Yankees or anybody else. Why? Because nobody can talk to him. So that's just nonsense until they sign a deal. But right now, nobody's feeling the pain. Look, minor leagues or spring training, Minor league is a separate deal, by the way, so there will be minor league baseball. So those guys will get paid. But spring training, nobody gets paid. So if Freddie Freeman doesn't go to spring training, doesn't matter. He wasn't going to get paid for spring training anyways. So nobody's feeling the pinch just yet. Even guys who are making $1 million, you're saying, well, man, you only make $1 million. You haven't been paid since October. True. But you weren't going to get paid for February or March anyways. You weren't going to start recouping that money until you got back around to playing games, there in April. So nobody's feeling that pinch. Nobody's getting pushes from the players going, fellas, like, y'all can figure it out. I need to get some cheese in here. You know what I mean? It's like, and so I think that's where we're at. We got to take a break. I know that we could talk about this a lot, and I'm going to get carried away, and it'll end up going way over. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Again, we were set to have spring training day, not happening because players and owners. And I think the most frustrating part, as I've expressed to Ben, BJ, is just that neither side at this point. And again, it's all posturing. You look out, and a couple weeks ago, the players were like, "Hey, we want a deal. We want a deal." And the owners, "Hey, we think we're putting forth a fair deal." Well, obviously, they're posturing to throw it in bad light on the other side. I think you're not serious about a deal from either side. And I'll put it again, because people are like, "Why are you siding with the owner?" I'm not siding with the owners. I'm not siding with the players. I'm siding with the fan who doesn't really care. I just want you to figure it out. And when you meet for 2 hours, you're not serious, right? If Ben and I want to work out a deal and say, "Ben, we got this $1 billion deal that involves TV, involves salaries, it involves pay structure, it involves revenue sharing." And I go and sit down with Ben. I say, "Hey, we got a lot of stuff we need to work out here." We meet for 2 hours. We have no deal. Ben walks away. I walk away. When are we going to meet again? I don't know. A week or so. Okay. Then we meet again.
But a 2-hour meeting, a 2-hour meeting is not a meeting.
Yeah, it's not a meeting. So, especially when you have more. And again, I'm using me and Ben in this example. There are obviously more people in the room than 2 people. So 2-hour meeting, you're presenting your ideas, and then you're saying nope, and you walk out. Then you don't meet again for a week. If we were serious, I would say, "Ben, we're going to meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. Come ready to talk. We're going to hammer this thing out. We really need to get it done." Guess what? We're going to bring lunch in. We're going to bring dinner in. And we're going to bring in coffee or whatever we need to get this thing done.
Yep.
And the fact that you can't meet but for 2 hours, no. Remember this, as contentious as the NFL was, did the NFL have 2-hour meetings? No. Roger Goodell and the players, they are sitting there. I remember when this was covered. They're meeting all afternoon. They're coming back the next day and meeting all day the next day. Major League Baseball has met with the players 3 times since December. None for more than 2 hours. You're not serious about a deal.
Mhm.
Either side. Either side. If you're serious about a deal, say, "Look, you know that we disagree with you. I know you disagree with me on things, but we ain't leaving until we get this done, because not playing is not an option."
Look, at the end of the day, you're talking about 2 different conversations going on at the same time. If you're talking about the players, they're trying to get what they're worth. The owner's trying to see what they're willing to take. That's why it be such a tug of war. It's something as simple as,
And I appreciate that, but at some point, if you're the MLB owners, you have to look at it and say, yes, they are a product, but if there is no product, what are we doing? My franchise is worth 0 if there's no games being played. I mean, that's the way I kind of look at it.
Me and BJ were talking about something in the break. Just say you might try. Just say you Bryce Harper, and you make the ultimate sacrifice. You say, "Listen, right? Hey, man, I got good money. I'm gonna give every player on this team, right? I'm gonna give y'all, and I'm just throwing it. I'm gonna give y'all a cool meal, a piece, because if we got to sit out this year, I want to make sure y'all good. You know what that does? That tells them owners, take that. Because what happens is, right, the owners know they got the upper hand. I know it's not, but this is what I'm saying, Kevin.
I don't mean to single him out.
But this is what I'm saying, though. Check this out, though. Check this out. Man, the hardest thing to get is a whole bunch of players on the same page. You don't understand. Like, we all got just ridiculously different situations, right? And it comes down to where you live at. We be like, "What you mean?" "Man, when I played with the Tigers, I knew guys that live behind the gate. That's their life. Golf course. I didn't live behind no gate. I could have, but I didn't. I knew guys that spent $100,000 on an entertainment system. I ain't do that. I could have, but I ain't do that." And that's what you really talking about. Like, you talking about the fact that you got guys in totally different situations. But the 53rd man on the roster, he can't lose 1 check.
Well, that's why I want to ask you, even though I'm sure the Major League Baseball Players Association has a, just comprehensive, complete, agreed upon set of principles that, hey, this is what we want. Are there some guys potentially within that who maybe don't make as much money, who look at it from the perspective of, I'm going to really need to play. Bryce Harper, like you said, I mean, you might have a $300 million contract, but there are players who don't. How much harder is this on them?
This is something me and Kevin talk. Listen, any league, MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA, the league is made up of the no-namers. That's the league. Yes, I know who LeBron is. I know who AD is. I know who Russ is. Who's the 15th guy on the roster? I don't know. That's the league. The guy who's the reason why he's jumping, because he knows, man, I don't want him to think I'm not being supportive of the team. The guys that get in when the game's over, or the guy who got to play multiple positions in baseball. Man, why do you like, I got to know how to pitch? I'm a shortstop. Because if they need somebody and I only do one thing, I don't play. So I'm just saying that's the bulk of the league. And I think the biggest disconnect is, look, hey, man, the best player in baseball doesn't even go to the playoffs. He's the best player in the MLB. Doesn't go to playoffs. He's sitting there talking about, I want to be a weatherman when I'm done. Yeah, because you could buy the weather center when you done. I just think that the one thing I didn't understand when I was in the National Football League is to understand the business behind, like the guys with the suits on is what you need to know more about, and they don't. We play baseball, we play football, we play golf, or what may have you. I think what happens is you're not speaking on behalf of the players that need it. The last collective bargaining agreement for the NFL, most of the players didn't even vote on it. Most of them. They didn't even vote on it. And somebody goes, dude, you're not going to vote on your future? Nah, man, I'm good. No. Because collective bargaining agreements are for the now, the future, and the past. It's all those things. And I just think them owners know, hey, man, the league's so disconnected. That's what we're using against them. We're going to use time, right? We're going to use miscommunications and no unification, none. Like, no, they ain't unified at all. That's what they really use against them because, like you say, Kevin and B say, look, it's going to be this. Look, man, it's getting close, right? And what if I am, one of those, the third or fourth reliever? And this was my year to try to get in that starter rotation, and there was no baseball. So now I'm looking forward to it. Now I got to start. So I do think that, the owners, they know they got the upper hand. They know they still got a little leeway. But the owners know, look, man, we're going to be billionaires regardless. We don't want to lose no money. Y'all are millionaires. And millionaires can become flat broke. But guess what? Most guys in the MLB ain't millionaires. They thousandaires, and they love it. They can't ill afford it. So I think that because the owners know this, there is no backup plan for baseball. We got backup plans. This ain't the only thing we own. This ain't the only thing we do. This is just one of the biggest things we're known for. Baseball players, this is all y'all got. Y'all ain't got nothing else. So I think that now they might be using that against them.
And I just think for the health of the sport, if you're a player, you also want to play because, again,
yes,
are your salaries going to continue to go up if people are mad that you stopped? Again, most people don't remember the last time baseball went on strike, but I think by and large, the reason a lot of leagues are seeing a lot of success is they haven't been out on strike. I know people think the NFL is untouchable. Go 3/4 of a season with no league and see how many people are like, man, the heck with you guys. Like, what the world? Your whole league's making billions of dollars.
Yep.
And you're not going to play. And so I think if you're Major League Baseball, somebody's got to come to the table and go, fellas, for the here and now, we're fine, right? We're good. Some of y'all maybe even saved the millions of dollars that you're making as players and owners, obviously billions of dollars. But at some point, you got to say, how does this affect us 2-3 years down the road when people are mad? It took steroids and ridiculously freakish home runs to bring baseball back after the last time they went on strike. I don't think you want to do that. There's way more things to pull people's attention away from your sport. I know pace of play and all that nonsense that people want to talk about. None of that matters if you're not out there, right? Hey, we can be upset that we don't like a 3-hour game. Fine. Guess what? You still played. I still watched it. You can deal with gripes at that point. What you can't deal with is there was no game, period. Because the sports centers and the blogs and all that, they're not going to come on and go, well, we're going to talk for the next hour about day 28 of no baseball. Nope. They're going to say they're still figuring it out. Next story. And today in other news, while you're not playing, this happened. The end. I think you're missing a big opportunity. We got to step aside. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. A lot to get to coming up. Final hour. Randy Taylor, SI.com, will join us. We'll talk about Matt Ryan v. Matt Stafford. Certainly been a hot topic here in this state. She'll join us coming up at the top of next hour. Guys, quickly, I know you had Mercer down starting spring practice. Speaking of things starting, Conference USA put out their schedule today, and Old Dominion, Southern Miss, and Marshall are still on it.
I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, not going to work.
They said we're going to the Sun Belt in July 1. And Conference USA saying, nope, we're committed to making sure you legally stay and fulfill your obligations. So this is the messiest divorce court ever.
I'm looking forward to it. I love it.
This is not going to go well. I don't see a team or 3 teams that don't want to be here and have said we're not going to be here playing that out.
Put their football schedule out yet? I think they may have. If they have not, but
I hope it comes out
Marshall
tomorrow.
and Southern Miss will be in both. Old Dominion be in both. We told you we weren't playing. Don't put us on the schedule. You put me on the schedule. This is going to be fun as it gets closer to the season. We're coming back. 1 more hour to go. Randy Taylor, SI, joins us when we return here on 3 and Out. Great to be here with you on 3 and Out. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, final hour of the program. Glad you're making us a part of your day. Super Bowl ending on Sunday. Matt Stafford and the Rams getting that Super Bowl ring, and automatically is Matt Stafford a Hall of Famer talk starts coming out. Richard Sherman weighs in. It's like, well, are we lowering the bar for the Hall of Fame? And that led our next guest to pin a column on that for SI.com. Randy Taylor joins us here on 3 and Out. Randy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm really good.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on. And obviously, Richard Sherman say, hey, are we lowering the bar for the Hall of Fame? And if Matt Stafford is, and certainly Matt Ryan is a Hall of Famer, and I've seen a lot of graphics going side by side of looking at the numbers. Just when you start looking at Hall of Fame resume, where do you think, before we get into who should be and shouldn't be, where do you think these guys stack up between Stafford and Matt Ryan with what they've done on the field?
I don't want to say they're the same guy, but they both had incredibly hard seasons when it comes to their team. Matt Ryan, personally, according to the stats that I have, he looks like he might have better odds at that. Four-time Pro Bowl, one-time MVP, one-time All-Pro, but he doesn't have that Super Bowl. However, if we're talking playoffs, he has been to or lost 6 different playoff games. Now, all of those teams that he lost to, they went to the Super Bowl. 4 of those teams went on to win the Super Bowl. We do know that horrible loss, though, to 28-3 blown lead against the Patriots, though, being one of those times where the team that he lost to won the Super Bowl. And Matt Stafford, he's only lost 3 playoff games. He's been through the playoffs 4 times, obviously, this past year. Sunday, he won the Super Bowl, but none of the teams, the 3 teams before Sunday, even made it to the Super Bowl. So, Matt Ryan is facing better teams when you look up that. And then, if we're talking Matt Stafford's stats, he's only a one-time Pro Bowl, no MVPs, no All-Pro, but he does have that Super Bowl championship. So, after looking at Richard Sherman's tweet and talking about lowering the bar for the Hall of Fame and, comparing it to a participation trophy, it did really get me wondering. Does a Super Bowl negate any accolades that a player has earned throughout his career?
And when you think about certainly Stafford and Ryan has the MVP that Stafford does not have. When talking about a Hall of Fame resume, I know, as you said, a lot of people talk about the Super Bowl, but how much value do you place on having an MVP on your resume?
I think that's pretty significant, but honestly, I would rank it under a Super Bowl championship. But that's not to say that doesn't mean Matt Ryan couldn't make it into the Hall of Fame without a Super Bowl championship. Because if we look at it, he's this era's Dan Marino, who's made it into the Hall of Fame, without a Super Bowl win. But I think if we're looking MVP versus Super Bowl championship, I would have to go Super Bowl championship above the MVP.
Brandon, when you think about the Super Bowl, though, Joe Flacco's won a Super Bowl. Nick Foles has won a Super Bowl. These are guys that they obviously weren't the best player in the league, let alone might not even be the best player on their team. Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl, but he wasn't even the MVP. That would go to Cooper Kupp. He wasn't even Offensive Player of the Year. That would go to Cooper Kupp. When you look at the fact that he only has 1 Pro Bowl, and when you talk about the most dominant quarterbacks when they played, does Matthew Stafford's name even come up?
No, I don't think so. He is we'll put it this way. I'll compare to all-time passing yard leaders. He is number 12 on that list. Matt Ryan at number 8. But if I go back to the fact that, Dan Marino doesn't have a Super Bowl win, he's number 7, right above Matt Ryan. Warren Moon, who doesn't also have a Super Bowl win, he's right under Matthew Stafford. So, he's in the top 15, but is he one of the first ones that I'm thinking of? When it comes to top quarterbacks, definitely not. So, that MVP or no MVP, especially not being the MVP in the Super Bowl, I think that does say a lot. But again, I'm going to have to go with Super Bowl over MVP. But if we look at their stats and their accolades as a whole, I'm going Matt Ryan if I have to choose between one or the other.
Randy, you look at the NFL, and I know a lot of people, as you said, have been pointing to MVPs and Super Bowl champions. Other sports, there seems to be certain benchmarks. Baseball is a big numbers sport where it's, hey, if you get this many hits or you hit this many home runs, you're probably in. Like without that, are there any numerical benchmarks that even matter in the NFL as far as Hall of Fame accolades numerically, especially with more games now on the schedule? The league has moved the rules package kind of to more passing, more offensive driven. Are there numbers that you feel like either Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford hit where it's like, look, it's just the straight numbers they're in?
See, and I would go to those passer ratings, QB passer ratings. You know, they're both very comparable in the low 90s. But if you look at it, Ryan technically has more games under his belt because he was drafted a season earlier, you know, 08 versus 09 for Stafford. But, I mean, they're both really still writing their legacies. And so, I don't necessarily think there's a specific number. I think it's their career as a whole, the accolades as a whole, that you really need to look at when it comes to whether or not they should be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
How much of the Hall of Fame potential for Ryan and Stafford going to come down to how they finish their careers? And I don't know, maybe if you assume Matt Stafford has 3 or 4 more years potentially, maybe Matt Ryan 2 or 3. I mean, it's impossible to know, but how much of whether or not they get in is going to be determined by how they finish their respective careers. Okay,
so, and I'm probably going to contradict myself a little bit because I said there wasn't any specific number that you should look at for them being a Hall of Fame candidate. But you could almost say here, and I'm getting there because, like I said, they are still writing their legacy. So I think a huge part of it, especially for Matt Ryan, if we're just going off the Super Bowl championship, whether he gets one or not, that's definitely going to be determined on how he finishes his career. But, I mean, right now they're fairly equal. However, nothing against Matt Stafford. You could almost say that the Rams helped Stafford win that Super Bowl more than Stafford helped the Rams. I think if you gave Matt Ryan this Rams, he could have won this Super Bowl as well. So it will be a huge factor on how they finish their careers. And, I mean, as of right now, as of today, I think Stafford has a better finishing his career strong than Matt Ryan does just right now.
I mean, Randy, the thing about Matthew Stafford that I think that bothers me is the fact that people say, well, he played for the Lions. Well, so did Barry Sanders. So did Calvin Johnson. And these guys were first ballot Hall of Famers in spite of the fact that they played for a Lions organization that never really won. The thing about it, I think what separates Matt Ryan from Matthew Stafford is it's not like Atlanta was a usual winner. He made this team a usual suspect as winners as well as a playoff contending team, and they didn't have to give him everybody that like Von Miller and Jalen Ramsey and Odell Beckham Jr. and Sony Michel. You talked about the roster. If Matty Ice never leaves Detroit, is he a Hall of Famer even with all the numbers he have? And if you think about Matt Ryan, did he solidify himself as a Hall of Famer for what he did for his organization, the same one that drafted him?
See, I honestly couldn't agree with you more because, I mean, you mentioned Megatron being on the Lions with him. And honestly, he's only 32 on the all-time receiving yards leader. He's not even top 15, which, I mean, not that that's not impressive because he's still on the list, but it's not like Matt Ryan has had this amazing team with him for his entire career. He did have Gonzalez for 5 seasons. He, had Julio Jones as well. But I mean, let's talk O-line, shall we, for a little bit? He's usually scrambling around the field, getting sacked and all that. So I think if you look just at the two guys as players, as quarterbacks, I think Matt Ryan has done more of what he needs to be doing in order to solidify him as a Hall of Fame candidate than Matthew Stafford. I mean, you can talk about their teams, but if we're looking at just as them, he's done what he needs to do in order to become a Hall of Fame candidate.
You mentioned, Randy, a moment ago that maybe Matt Stafford a better chance to finish out his career on a high note or with more production. What's next for Matt Ryan? I mean, how many years do you think he has left? And could there be a scenario where maybe Atlanta drafts a quarterback, drafts his replacement, and Matt Ryan goes to, I know he's done it all for Atlanta, goes to another organization and has some success there?
I mean, really anything is possible, and I think Matt Stafford has set that bar, especially this year. You know, Tom Brady, I don't want to compare them to Tom Brady. arguably the GOAT of the NFL. But Tom Brady left for Tampa Bay and won the Super Bowl the same year, his first year there. Matt Stafford moves to the Rams, wins the Super Bowl his first year. So I think anything is possible. And I think that maybe, if the Falcons do draft Ryan's replacement and he ends up somewhere else, I totally do not think it's out of the realm of possibilities for him to end up through the playoffs in the Super Bowl and possibly getting that ring for himself.
All right, Randy, man. I mean, the NFL Hall of Fame committee calls you and say, listen, you get a vote. Matty Ice's career is done. You know, Matthew Stafford's career is done. They got to go with what they have now. You only get to pick one or the other. Is it Stafford or Ryan?
If we're going off of today and everything that we've talked about today, I'm going with Matt Ryan.
Randy Taylor, SI.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Randy, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Guys, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. You can see her piece there at SI.com talking about Matt Stafford versus Matt Ryan and those Hall of Fame credentials that everybody's brought up. Richard Sherman bringing that up there as well. And certainly both of those gentlemen have more career to go before their story is done being written.
Well, great points from Randy when you think about the storylines that are around Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan potentially getting into the Hall of Fame. And Kevin, I've never really thought about this, but you're also right when kind of comparing football candidacy for the Hall of Fame to baseball, where baseball it's okay, get to 3,000 hits obviously is the
500 homers,
right?
yeah.
Get to 500 home runs. Well, in football, I don't know that you have that. I mean, and we were talking about some of the stats earlier, but is it 50,000 passing yards? Is it set? No, that stuff really doesn't matter. It's interesting. So the fact that you don't have a specific set of statistical milestones leaves it up for a little more kind of, I don't know, subjectivity and kind of debate and discussion when you think about who is, who isn't. I do think for as much as everybody's talking about Matt Stafford right now, to Richard Sherman's point, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, we've talked about guys, but I think
Phillip Rivers right below Ben Roethlisberger all-time list.
But I think Matt Ryan is on pace with a couple of more years to finish in the top 6 or 7 in the history of the league in passing yards.
BJ, your favorite team, Jacksonville. We would always say, hey, man, you think Tony Basil's Hall of Fame? What you said? Man, he was all pro. You giving me the things that solidified him. He was the best, not just for the Jags, but in the league. And it showed because he was an all-pro. We always talk about, and I said, do you think because Tony Basile got in, that paved the way for Fred Taylor, who's arguably the best player to ever come out of there? Did Matthew Stafford elevate the Detroit Lions? No. Was Matthew Stafford an incredible player? No. Barry Sanders went to Pro Bowl. I mean, he went to Pro Bowls. He didn't make a Super Bowl because obviously he didn't have a team around him. Calvin Johnson was a Pro Bowler. When Antonio Brown came over to Tampa Bay, he was already a Pro Bowler. I mean, he was already a Hall of Famer. He just won the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl to his resume, not a Hall of Fame resume. He want to add one to his resume because, like I said, what Matt Ryan did, he had to play in the shadow of Michael Vick. That's hard to do. He had to elevate the status quo of a team. Let's face it, outside of Deion, ain't got much of a tradition, right? He did both to the point where now when they don't make the playoffs, we're like, well, dude, because we got used to them going to the playoffs. He also gave you a regular season MVP with Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger and Matthew Stafford. So all I'm saying is, if Matthew Stafford's best, is he a first team All-Pro? The answer is no. And he passed for 5,000 yards. At Matty Ice's best, he's the best. He's considered the best player in the league because he got the MVP. I'm just saying, 2083 ain't because of Matty Ice. That'll be because of Dan Quinn. That's another story for another day.
Yeah, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Heather Dennis, 10 games that will shape the college football playoff. Wonder if it'll be a Sun Belt game for Marshall, or will it be a Conference USA game for Marshall, Southern Miss, and Old Dominion? Now we'll get to that when we come back. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
Right now.
Good to have you here on this Tuesday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from George Atkinson coming up in just a little bit. Former Oakland Raider, won Super Bowl 11?
I see you,
Back
Kevin,
in
with
the
the
day,
Roman numerals.
Yeah, I was struggling earlier today on the show trying to read those Roman numerals, but 30 picks in his career against Super Bowl champion. We'll get his thoughts on the game that just took place there over the weekend as well. So a lot to get you there. But Heather Dinich, we talked about big games coming up, 10 games that will shape the college football playoff coming up next season. And there's always going to be a lot of them out there. One of them on the list, number 3, Georgia and Oregon. Right off the bat in the ATL, Dan Lanning out of the Georgia program, coming back to coach against the Georgia program. That could get interesting.
Yeah, good luck with that.
No, I'm saying I do believe Georgia's better. I think does that at least level the playing field? Week 1, Oregon's not going to be the same team you saw this last year on tape.
Nope.
And Georgia's losing a lot of guys to the NFL. So they have a lot of talent, but it's game 1. I mean, if you would have looked at game 1 of the season, you'd have thought Clemson would have been maybe a little better. Even though they lost, it was close. They struggled a little bit on offense. DJU is going to get better. And did he get a lot better as a season?
No,
So
he did not.
Game 1 could be interesting.
I think it's a chance for Georgia to make a statement. And you may say, well, why does a national champion need to make a statement? Well, first and foremost, I think the metric for Georgia is more. You know, Kirby Smart, this is a program that's modeled after Alabama. They want to win multiple national championships. They want to be the national program that everybody else is trying to match and catch up with. But I also think it's easy to look at Georgia and reflect on the 2021 season and then look to 2022 and go, look at all the guys on defense they lost. I mean, somehow people are talking about a quarterback competition, which I don't get at all. Jermaine Burton's gone. The defensive line. This team is still loaded with talent. This team recruits like very few other programs, maybe Alabama, Texas A&M, and that's it. Great coaches, depth returning. The offensive line is going to be really good. Again, Stetson Bennett finished in the top 5 in the country in passer rating last year. I don't know how to kind of emphasize that enough for some people who may say, well, you still might have a question at quarterback. No, you don't. You're one of the few teams in the history of college football returning a championship winning quarterback who finished in the top 5 in passer rating. You are in a great position at quarterback. There's talent all over the field. And I think a lot of people are going to look at that game and say, this is, Kevin, with the storylines, could Georgia be in a tough spot early? I think Georgia views this as a chance to make a statement, further affirm themselves as maybe the national favorite, at the very worst, one of the 2 or 3 national favorites. I think that's a heck of an opener for Dan Lanning.
Dan Lanning will get the hell out of him the same way Sam Pittman did when he went to Arkansas. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be much to do about nothing, because this is the thing about Georgia. It's not going to matter what happened the first 2 quarters. You got to beat them for 4. Them halftime adjustments going to be rough. Now, Dan Lanning understands how the defense works, but he don't have that defensive talent anymore. Just because I know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, you have to stop them at doing it. You're going to have to find a way to stop Brock Bowers. They're probably going to go more to the run game this year, Kevin and BJ, because it makes the offense, more balanced. But, last time I checked, they got a bunch of guys coming back that was on that 2021 defense, too. They got some guys coming back. So, and I think Nolan Smith is going to be a headliner this year. I think
it's going to be a preseason All-American.
Yeah, so I think sometimes, we get into this notion of, hey, man, I don't think Georgia that good. You know who say that? People that don't have to play them. So Dan Lanning was like, yeah, man, I'm going to Oregon. And I guarantee you, Dan Lanning forgot who Oregon had first game of the year. Like, yeah, we get ready for – we got Georgia. That's right. You got Georgia.
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta, right? And people going to say, listen, it's going to be raining red and black up in there. But I will say this, though, Kevin, just what Georgia's really doing. Georgia leads, no doubt. We're in the SEC East, right? Got Auburn as a crossover every year. So what's going to happen? Oregon's definitely going to be competing in the Pac-12, unless they meet Utah. And you know how that gets. But you got a national brand that comes with a lot of, because that's what they do. They won't just say Oregon. No, this is the same Oregon team that beat Ohio State. They're going to keep on saying that to kind of give validity to that, to that Oregon squad. I think Oregon's going to be good in the Pac-12. Do not judge Oregon on the first game. They're going to come out, they're going to be easy to find. They're going to have them big, gigantic John Deere-looking uniforms on, and they're going to get the brakes beat off of them. I just think that, remember a couple of years ago, everybody was trying to play everybody. Oh, it's going to be Clemson versus Arizona State, Florida versus USC. And I'm like, why are they doing that? Because I think what they do is, if you do lose the game, you just need a team you lost to keep playing well. Now, Georgia, that's probably going to be a loss if you play them. But I just think that, bowl games are lackluster. Let's face it, there's a bunch of them. Even though, and for those who don't know, we added one for 2022. Do you know what it is? Kevin Thomas Bowl coming to Las Vegas. But I think too, that's what it really is, Kevin. That's what it really is, BJ. You want to make your resume look undeniable. I'm not saying that Georgia needs it, but they want to say, hey man, who y'all playing in non-conference? Georgia, Clemson. So, hey, I mean, we'll see. But I think while Oregon will definitely have offensive firepower, is that going to mean anything if that quarterback is on his back? If he can't throw to his open receivers? So we'll see. I think it's going to be much to do about nothing, because the thing about Kirby Smart was fighting to win in Natty. Now that he's won in Natty, he don't want to fall off. You know what I'm saying? He don't want to Gene Chizik himself, right? You don't want that stuff. Hey, man, what happened? Lost to every team. Dude, they lost to like every team. I don't see that happen to no Georgia, by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think sometimes when you talk about what teams to pick, no Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't think Marcus Mariota, brother, coming through there anytime soon, right? BJ and Kevin. So yeah, it's gonna be some nice uniforms. They're gonna break out something nice, and they're gonna get the hell beat out of them when they kick the ball, because that's what Georgia does. Something you said, Kevin, the 23-20 win in the Super Bowl was not indicative of actually what happened in the game. It looked closer than what it was until you watched the game. It might end up being 27-10, but it was over a long time ago. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's going to be same old. Georgia going to take 2021 into 2022.
Some of the other games of note out there are the Texas A&M at Alabama and the best rosters money can get bowl, right after the recruiting classes. And I know Jimbo said it doesn't matter, but, it just recruiting classes happen. But that is one that obviously Texas A&M won a season ago, didn't get to the SEC championship game. But, I mean, for Jimbo Fisher, you got to win it again, right? Because what's the next step? You beat Alabama. You still haven't been to an SEC championship game, which is what you're going to have to do if you want to get to the national playoff at this point.
I think that's what's disappointing is you have to maximize when you have wins like that, their meaning and their impact. And you beat Alabama and didn't win the division. So I think you look back. Are you going to beat Alabama 2 years in a row? Are you going to beat an Alabama team that a lot of pundits are saying this could be Nick Saban's most talented squad in terms of returning experience? Are you going to do that in Tuscaloosa?
I don't think so.
That's a lot to ask.
Look, I got to say this again. When it comes to Alabama, look, when y'all need to stop letting Nick Saban. Hey man, I think your team is ready to come play us. Yeah, coach. No. Leave them alone. Listen, I want the rest of my season. Like once again, was it 3 years ago now, BJ? Old Vanderbilt. When they had old Derek, man, they undefeated. Right? I think they just beat Kansas State, had a quarterback, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, couldn't hit nothing. We won't have Bama came to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And I think they beat them like 70-something-0. You don't want Bama in anything. Maybe in basketball, not in football.
And Texas A&M on this list a couple of times. They're in at number 8, according to Heather Dinich, games that will shape the college football playoff. Miami at Texas A&M. So that means for like the 10th year in a row, Miami is back, ready to meet expectations.
Come on now. You got Coach Cristobal. You got Tyler Van Dyke back at quarterback.
Hey, we're back. We got Florida, game number 1 right out the gate. We're going to show everybody national championship.
Took that L. They know what they took. Sorry.
That was one example, but I mean, you've had other examples where Miami's back and just have not.
No, BJ. No, because we can do this. Listen. We root for, if you want to call them, 2 of the big 3, even though UCF wants to be the big 4. I'm sorry, that's not happening. But what would quantify as Miami being back at this point?
I think consistently being one of the favorites in the ACC, because when you say back, to your point, what Miami
I'm
had,
just saying that's a joke,
right? But what I'm saying is, when people say Miami's back, I'm not saying Miami's back to the early 2000s or back to the 80s. That's not realistic. Those are college football dynasties. I'm not saying you're back to what you were when you were the best program in the land. I'm saying you're back to national relevancy. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
What's the quarterback that played for Texas? What's his name? He just went pro last year. What was his name? The one that went, we're back.
Oh, Sam Ehlinger?
They like Sam Ehlinger. We're back. Like to the fan base.
I think Miami.
But if you're Miami, you got to win one of these games.
You do.
This is what I think if Miami is back. Is Miami gonna play in Charlotte? They ever gonna play in the ACC championship game?
I think they went once. Yeah. Should have gone twice, but had the.
Well, so think about it. So Miami, since they've been to ACC, have been to Charlotte one time, and I'm not talking about the vacation. Playing the Bank of America Stadium.
Got a very talented roster, very impressive coaching staff. Just keep an eye on the Hurricanes. That's all I'm saying.
She hasn't been on one of their top games. And then kind of interesting, as much as everybody is talking about the ACC, she had number 5, NC State and Clemson, which could potentially decide the Atlantic Division. Dave Doran, obviously excited.
On a serious note, NC State's going to be really good. Don't. NC State's going to be really good. A lot of talent. Devin Leary back at quarterback. Jakeem Harris, local star, obviously.
No. See, this is what we got to do. No. We got to have something to where every time we mention NC State, like we got to cue something because somebody goes to NC State and Kevin's like, I mean, what? I'm not.
People were tweeting at him the other day about this.
No. I will say this. We had AC Media Days a couple of years ago, and somebody get a picture, David Doran coming out, and somebody goes, "That's him right there." He looks at Kevin like, "That's him. That's him." Like, but in a sense, look, people only get mad at the truth. There are certain people, they are true to who they are. Like, this is who they are. Dave Doran, he's not going to listen. He's on a word count. Like, if pitchers have a pitch count, listen, man, I got about 1,500 words.
He doesn't care about how many words he gives Kevin Thomas. He cares about the dubs.
No. I want to be there. We got to have a camera crew. Kevin's at the press conference. Coach Doran. And everybody just bars. What? Listen, give us that spirit you give the team.
They're going to be good. They're going to be
good. They will be good. I actually talked to Dave earlier this week, and I got it down. I said, "Hey, man, tell me about Clemson. Can't play it." This is what he had to say. Amazing. See you now, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
This is Sunbelt Commissioner Keith Gill, and you're listening to 3 and Out with BJ, Kevin, and Ben.
Welcome back to 3 and Out. I am Ben Troop. That is BJ Bennett. Look, with all things going on right now with the National Football League, I mean, we talking about prestigious players. We talking about HBCU Legacy Bowls. We talking about all things football. I think this next guy is football. I don't think so. He is football greatness. Super Bowl champion. Played at Morris Brown in his college days. The great, the man, the myth, the legend, the great George Atkinson. What's going on with you there, George?
Man, not a lot, man. Just kind of relaxing, you know. Season's over, and I'm just back here in Savannah, spending some time.
Now, George, before we get to the Legacy Bowl, the HBCU Legacy Bowl, which I think Doug Williams and those guys are doing a great job. We just finished off an incredible Super Bowl, man. What were your thoughts on the Super Bowl? And when you think about a guy like Matthew Stafford, man, do you think he's on a Hall of Fame type track?
I don't know. He's got to win a few more, I think, to get Hall of Fame. But I think it was a great Super Bowl, a real good Super Bowl. It displayed the youth in the league with the Bengals. You see another up-and-coming quarterback, that's for sure. And the Bengals will be hard to beat in the future with Burrows. And they're a pretty good team. You look at Chase. They got weapons. You got that kid at wide receiver. He can runs good routes. We played him, and I got a first-hand look at him. So this, I think Cincinnati, man, put up a brilliant fight. A couple of plays, though, that were questionable in the fourth quarter towards the end on that last drive, I think really caused them the ball game. You got 4th and 1. I think you got to put a guy like Burrows up on the center and either let him go for it or give it to the back.
George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. And George, on the other side, I know he played a part of some great defenses. How about that Rams defense and just guys flying all over the place on that side of the ball for them?
Well, they came through at the right time. I mean, they played their butts off, man, in the fourth quarter. When they had to be there, that rush, they had it there. So it goes to show you that they were definitely prepared, and they got better the second half. I thought they played a much better game plan in the second half than they did the first half. And I thought they were very effective with the pass rush in the fourth quarter.
George, you obviously won a championship. What traits do all championship teams have in common?
They have a strong belief that they can win, and they play like they can win, Winning teams have, and when you look at positions, you got to have good quarterbacks, good skilled receivers, a strong running game, and a great up-front offensive line. You got to have a complete package, both offensively and defensively. Your defense got to be aggressive, big, fast, strong, and tenacious, as we used to say. And your offense got to be able to strike it in the distance.
George, I mean, you played at Morris Brown. When you look at right now what's going on with HBCUs, I know you got big time guys like you see what's going on with JSU with Deion Sanders. You talk about Hugh Jackson, and what he's doing right now at Grambling. You look at TSU and Eddie George, Doug Williams, Grambling's finest. Started the first ever Legacy Bowl. How do you feel about the Legacy Bowl, and do you think it was finally due for those guys to get their shine?
I think it was finally due. Like you said, I was in the HBC, but when I came along, the SEC wasn't integrated. So the AFL went to the smaller colleges to get players. That's how the old AFL started. And after that started, the leagues merged. More and more guys started getting pushed to the back because of the bigger schools integrating, and the best players would go to the integrated schools. So the SBCUs, they kind of cut back on producing professionals because they weren't getting quality athletes at that time. But now, like you said, you named some coaches who are in there. These teams are getting good athletes, they're getting transfers and what have you. And I think it's a good thing. The exposure is definitely needed. And I think you're going to start to see a number of small college guys from the SBCU get another shot at producing in the NFL. And I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad it started, and I hope they continue it and improve it along the way.
Yeah, George, has been said the number one recruit out of high school goes to an HBCU there as well. We certainly know the passion is there amongst the fan base. How do you see this turning into a long-time trend? Do those guys have to go and have success while they're there immediately to kind of keep that momentum going for those top recruits to continue to flow there?
Exactly. In order to get the top recruits, you got to have something for them to come to. You got to have exposure. You gotta be privy and have actions in the NFL, because that's what these kids go to the big schools for, to get exposure, to get exposed to the NFL and get a decent round draft pick choice, become a decent draft pick choice. But the thing is in the past, there was not the exposure. Now, with the coaches that are in the HBCU, I think you mentioned Deion, Hugh Jackson, Eddie George. That alone will attract top players. Those guys are going to get good players, and the other teams in the HBCU will have to step up. So you're going to start to see more name coaches, I think, in the HBCU schools, which will definitely increase the exposure as well as give these kids an opportunity to produce.
George, you talk about the exposure, the coaches. I mean, Deion Sanders, when you reflect on his career, when you reflect on what he's done, I mean, talk about his, really trend-setting move here to get the ball rolling with some very, very high-profile coaches and obviously bring more exposure nationally, like you talked to the HBCU ranks.
You look at that move Deion made. I think that was a gutsy move, because most guys would want to go into the big schools. He took a shot. Okay, I got a head coaching job. I can start and show my abilities, show my skills, show what I can do at a small school. And he went to Jackson and turned that thing around. And now you got Hugh Jackson, who coached the Raiders for a few years, a pretty good professional coach. He's at HBCU. You got Eddie George, who played in the league. A great football player. He's at an HBCU, which gives the whole thing a different look, because these kids now will get training from professionals and not just, say, regular coaches. These guys played in the league. They know what's going on. They keep up with the game. They know what the trends are. They know how to keep these kids in good condition and know what the pros are looking for, and they train them that way and teach them systems that they can function in the pros. So the systems you see these schools have from Hugh Jackson, Deion, Eddie George will be on a pro-type level with a variation of plays, which gives exposure to the kids and show what they can do and how quick they can learn. Because one of the key things in the NFL today, as you well know, Ben, is that these offenses and defenses are so sophisticated now. It's a library of things you have to learn, and if you're not quick on your feet, these other kids come in with that from bigger schools because they practice it, and that's what they have in their system. They're ahead of you. It takes a minute, and I've seen that firsthand. Guys with great talent, but slow to learn because they haven't been exposed to the professional way of doing things.
George, when you think about Doug Williams, though, and just him being a trailblazer, obviously his NFL career, playing at Grambling, being the first, a black man, a black quarterback to win and win a Super Bowl MVP, tried to coach some time at Grambling to start the first Legacy Bowl. Just talk about his significance and understand that sometimes, us being the first, we don't know why we were the first, but for him to say, look, man, I want to start this Legacy Bowl because I really did it at both levels, and now I'm bringing this exposure back to where it all started with me.
Yeah, and he brings credibility. Super Bowl winner, first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, coming from a small school, he gave back, and that's something that we hadn't seen much of, is these guys giving back. And Doug was the perfect guy to get that done because of his experience in the league, his exposure to the right people, and being involved in the NFL for all the years. he was assistant in Washington to Bruce Allen, and that kind of exposure helps him a lot to initiate things, especially for the black schools. I praise him for the fact that he looked back, and he gave something to the institution and the league, the HBCU schools. He's giving something back uh, to show that he was thankful for them being there for him, because he wouldn't have gotten this opportunity to play quarterback if he hadn't gone to Grambling, and Eddie Robinson wasn't such a great coach to develop. So, I praise him for that bit. A lot of guys keep going, they forget where they come from. I'm glad Doug has made the moves he's made.
And George, finally, I know we've gone through another coaching cycle through the National Football League. I know that Robert Flores right now is suing the National Football League, but you think about it, no Jim Caldwell, no Eric Bieniemy. And you think about it, obviously the National Football League is over 75% African-American, yet every time it's time to be the head coaches of these teams seemingly gets looked over. What do you think is going to have to change in order for, black coaches, position coaches get head coaching opportunities?
Well, it has to change from within the NFL system. It's got the organizations have to be more receptive and more accessible for black coaches to become head coaches. I was on a staff, Gruden's staff, and we just got replaced. And like you said, there are a number of coaches this year that were hired, none were black. And you have to ask yourself why. And, the answer is right there in the NFL office. So, I think the commissioner has to answer that question, and the owners, the guys who own the teams, have to answer that question. And, you look at the Raiders, you look at Art Shell, he was a pioneer as a black coach. Al Davis gave him a shot, and the Raiders have always been that way. You look at Tom Flores. He's a Mexican. It's got to be the organizations. They have to have the same mentality that Mr. Davis had way back in the 80s, where he gave Art Shell an opportunity. A guy who played the game, a Hall of Fame, a guy I played with for 12 years. We came in the league together. And when you look at the whole situation, Ben, it's each organization, and the commissioner has to make the decision as to why and what has to be done. The statement that is being made is that there are no qualified black head coaches, and I don't think that's true.
Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. George, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Anytime, my man.
Appreciate it. George Atkinson joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll come back. Much more to get to all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Tuesday. Again, appreciate RandyTaylorSI.com joining us. George Atkinson joining us here on the program. Rich Styles back in hour number 1. Join us on the program as well. So much more to come this week. Obviously, now that we're on the backside of the Super Bowl, you've got draft to look forward to. Maybe we have baseball to look forward to. BJ and Ben, you've got the combine and more. So a lot happening here in the coming weeks to close out February.
And spring practice for college football, as you mentioned earlier, Mercer underway. I believe Coastal Carolina out of the Sun Belt underway. You'll see just about everybody in the next couple of weeks start spring ball.
Absolutely. So looking forward to spring practice getting underway as well. We'll have you covered all around the South once we get to that and more. We've got more for you tomorrow here on 3 and Out. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Spotify, YouTube, at ESPN Coastal on YouTube. Get the podcast version of the show each and every day. We'll see you tomorrow here on 3 and Out.